All right, guys, welcome. My name is Suhei Myers, and today I will be talking about feminist theory. Okay, so to start off, most of the information that I got was from Corey's book titled Theory and Practice of Counseling and Psychotherapy, and Carolyn Serb's Feminist Theories and Feminist Psychotherapies, Origins, Themes, and Diversities. So, what is it? What does it mean to be a feminist therapist? First, Corey in his book states, feminist counseling is built on the premise that it is essential to consider the social, cultural, and political context that contributes to a person's problems in order to understand that person. So what does that even mean? It actually means that this approach is super inclusive. So it respects diversity and acknowledges the identities, and it acknowledges that intersecting identities shape experience. This theory focuses on the fact that we are all basically brought up in some sort of political, social structure, right? And so that actually affects who we are as people, and it affects how we behave. Okay, so it focuses on everyone. Feminists kind of have this like stereotype that they hate all men and they're like women only and all this. It's not like that. Feminists want equality. That's basically it. And the theorists focus on the differences between men and women, but not just that, but being trans or being non-binary or being queer. Like, everything shapes who you are, and how you deal with these things is important. So what about the history? Okay, so there is no single person that can be identified as the founder, but there are it's a collection of themes focusing on being inclusive. Get it? So since there's not one person that can be credited as the originator, there are some prominent figures that shaped it, who include Jean Baker Miller, Carolyn Zerb Enns, Olivia Espin, and Laura Brown. This theory really gained momentum during the 1960s. This is when they say that it started, and this is a time when the women's movement was sweeping across many parts of the world. Okay, so what are the goals of counseling? First of all, the first goal is to eliminate immediate symptoms. So if you are using, we want you to stop, right? If you are hurting yourself, like because you're depressed or whatever the case may be, we want you to stop those coping mechanisms. They're maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? So, and then it also focuses how everything is connected: pain, symptoms, and life circumstances. So, for example, if you are a homeless person who is abusing alcohol, the first thing is we want you to stop drinking, right? Start going to AA, because it includes everything. So we want you to start a program, and then we want to make sure that you stop drinking, and then we address the homelessness and the pain that comes from being homeless, and the self-esteem that can be dragged down from being homeless. So there's so many different aspects. The pain, symptoms, and life circumstances are all intertwined one way or another. And then also we want the client to be involved in social justice. Like, at the end of the day, we want change, right? And so in order to achieve that change, everybody has to do a little bit of their part. So It encourages people to become active agents in changing the social systems that oppresses them. This activist element distinguishes it from many traditional therapies. So yeah, okay. So what are the key concepts? First of all, one of the foundational ideas is the personal is political. That means that personal experiences, especially those of women in marginalized groups, are shaped by larger social and political structures. Even as the therapist, you come in with some sort of political and social background. So you even discuss that in therapy because you want to make sure that you are aware of the power differences and that your client understands that you are not above them, if that makes sense. Then there's also gender fair approaches. Historically, many psychological theories were male-centered. So feminist theory works to explain differences in male and female roles and expectations, challenging stereotypes. So if you grew up with a dad that stayed home, that's challenging a stereotype because they are socially acceptable to be the breadwinner, right? Not every stay-at-home dad is like, most of them are frowned upon because it's just not common. But changing and challenging those stereotypes is one of the gender fair approaches. Then also there's flexible multicultural perspective. It embraces the meaning it focuses on the individual regardless of sex, gender, race, ethnicity, or cultural background. This flexibility is vital because oppression and identity are complex and multi-layered. So you can come from Japan and be seen as the individual, but because you bring your own culture and your own political background and your own social background, like we talked about that the personal is political, they see you as an individual and they try to get to know what works with you best. So yeah, they focus on the individual. And lastly, they believe it's a lifespan perspective, which views the human development as a lifelong process. Feminist therapy doesn't focus on childhood experiences, focus only on childhood experiences, but looks at the entire life course. Unlike some theories or like Freud that just kind of stopped at 12. So they actually take a look at the entire lifetime because it's consistently changing, and not just that, you're consistently being oppressed and changed by the political climate, the social climate. Everything is included. So it's like taking everything into consideration, if that makes sense. Okay, some lesser known informations is that there were different waves and branches of feminism. It has many components. So, for example, it has liberal feminists, which focus on equality within the current systems. These are often seen as the mainstream feminism or feminists. Then they focus on, these are like the old, not old, but the original, yeah, I think that's a better word, the original feminists that are like, women are being oppressed, period, and then they are looking for equality within the current systems. Then there's radical social change feminists. They argue for deep societal change at the roots, focusing on dismantling the patriarchy. So these are people that realize that the patriarchy oppresses so many of them, so many people in general, and so they want social change and radical social change, not just like polite small change here and there. No, they want radical change. They want it to be different. Then there's cultural feminists, which is not what you think it is. It's actually, it emphasizes on women's unique strengths and challenges by the patriarchy, and it's often been led by white middle class women. So these cultural feminists focus on mainly on white culture and how the patriarchy oppresses women, and they focus on strengths of women and how they are being consistently challenged. Now, the women of color feminists are, you would think that they are the multicultural ones, because they bring attention to the intersecting oppressions of race and gender. So they focus on all races and all genders. Postmodern feminists question the narratives that are like stereotyped of people, including within feminists themselves. So they're saying that not only is the patriarchy affecting people outside of feminism, it's affecting feminism itself. So even if you consider yourself a feminist, you're not excluded from being swayed one way or another because of the political climate, the social climate. And then there's queer feminism that challenges traditional gender and sexual norms. And then there's the third wave feminism. These emerged in the 1990s, and they feel like they are the more flexible, more inclusive feminists, that they use contemporary cultural tools like music, media, and the internet to spread its message. So most of us now that consider ourselves feminists are considered third wave feminists, because we're more inclusive and we're using different avenues to spread the message and try not to be just like women only, and if that makes sense. So yeah. Okay, so what are the principles? One, again, key principle is that everything is political and social, and this includes the therapist. So even as a therapist, you come in with a social background, a political background that you actually discuss with your client, because you can't take yourself out of the equation because you're in it. So you have opinions, you have biases. So that is also discussed. They require, or not require, but that social justice is central. Change begins by changing how we think and by recognizing power structures. Power structures are everywhere. It could be parent, child. It could be teacher, student. It could be therapist, client. Because like there's a power differential there, because a therapist can actually call CPS on a client, and the client can do that on, I mean, they could, but it's not common. So feminist therapy values all voices, especially those marginalized or silenced historically. Elevating these voices is essential for the true healing and change. They also focus on the fact that it's an egalitarian relationship. It's one of the biggest principles, because they believe that the therapist is not the expert. The client is the expert in their own life. So it's person-centered that way, which is one of the reasons why I like it, because it mixes person-centered with everything else. They are not big on diagnosis. Their skepticism toward traditional diagnosis, since normalcy is often defined by the dominant cultural groups, which may exclude or pathologize marginalized experiences. So what does that mean? It means that norms, social norms, or what is acceptable was created by the dominant culture. So this dominant culture, what they see as normal, a marginalized culture might see as odd or different, or the other way around. So diagnosing labels, and they're not really big on that, because they're like, normalcy, for who is it normal, you know? And then finally, feminist therapy acknowledges all forms of oppression is valid, and it's important to consider within social cultural environment. So every oppression, including men's oppression, which is kind of like, it sounds odd because it's like men are normally the ones that are oppressing, but they could be oppressed by the patriarchy too, because they are expected to be, strong and not express their feelings, and this sense of, stoic man is a thing, and some men aren't like that, and that's okay, and we accept them, and we want them to flourish, and we want them to feel comfortable in their own skin, as well as women. So every oppression is valid. Okay. So pathology. So where does this come from? I'm so sorry. Where do the problems come from? So first of all, it's coming from oppression. There is a globalizing narrative stating that, we should be a certain way, regardless of where you're from. In Mexico, men are supposed to be machistas, and women are, influenced by the Marianismo, which basically means that they are pure, good women, which is not who women are in general. So everyone is being some sort of oppression. And then the DSM-5, like we talked about, it's normalcy, but for who? Who decide that this is normal? And why do they get to decide that? And then that everything is external. Not everything, but most things are external. Like all the oppressions that are coming in, they're external. Unless you have internalized misogyny, then that's coming from within you. But most of everything is external. Okay. So how do we demonstrate change? Good question. We want to say that there's change by when we demonstrate wellness, resistance to oppression, and survival. So what does that mean? You see a client feeling hopeful and being capable of coping with life's challenges. That's wellness. That's them being okay with where they are. That doesn't mean that they're complacent, because we want them to have that resistance to oppression, that social justice concept that is moving us forward, and that what feminists want to move us forward, right? To make change even in the smallest sense. So just because you're showing wellness doesn't mean that you're content and complacent in the place that you are. That's not what it means. It just means that you're demonstrating hope, which is not something that everybody has. And then there's the resistance to oppression. And then lastly, survival, which is recognizing the strength that it takes to keep going despite adversity. So we want people to understand that they are being strong by being here. Okay, so some of the techniques. Empowerment is key. This one is like, it's in almost every book. They want to encourage self-expression, and including anger for women, because women aren't socialized to be angry. So they want to express self-expression from the client, and they're boosting the self-esteem by recognizing the client's strengths. So it's not just saying, hey, you got this. It's saying, hey, you got this because you're a strong person that is, hardworking and determined. And so you're recognizing those strengths. So you're boosting that self-esteem so that there can be change, so that there's self-expression, so that there's change in society. I hope that makes sense. Self-disclosure. Everything is always used in moderation. So some self-disclosure is very important, especially when you discuss the power dynamics in a therapeutic relationship. You want to make sure that you disclose certain things about yourself, but like I said, everything in moderation. The therapy is not about you as a therapist. So you want to make sure that they understand who you are, but also don't make it about you. Then there's identity and gender role analysis. This helps clients understand how societal expectations impact them, whether they are women, men, or non-binary. And then lastly, there's the power analysis, which explores the power dynamics in therapy and society, making this explicit to reduce inequality in the therapeutic relationship. So you discuss them, you make them clear to make sure that the client understands where you're coming from, and that you understand where the client is coming from. Okay. So when it comes to trauma, substance use, and eating disorders, first of all, these are normally done to women. If you experience some sort of trauma, it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, it's done to a woman. It's not, and it's also done to men. Don't get me wrong. It's done to men too, but it's mainly done to women, right? And then substance use are like coping mechanisms due to this trauma. So this is also external, like we talked about. And then lastly, eating disorders. They could be from a woman trying to make herself small or modest or non-imposing, something that society kind of breeds women to be, just modest and small. Okay, so what about the future? The future of feminist therapy is hopeful. Change is coming as society becomes more aware of systemic inequalities. Feminist therapy continues to evolve, aiming to empower individuals and communities towards social justice. So change is continuous, and it's not going to stop. It's the whole lifespan. And we want change, and we hope for change, and we're encouraging our clients to be in social justice, to make change happen. So it's not just you, it's everyone surrounding you. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. These are my references, the ones that I mostly used. Yeah, I'll see you guys in class.